Hello and good morning friends, welcome to the CEC EduSet live lecture. Dear friends, as you know that recently we have completed our series on intellectual property right, and from today onwards we are going to talk on a new kind of intellectual property. We are starting with a series on laws relating to trademarks, and for this we have again with us in our studios Mr. Ashwini Sewal. Mr. Ashwini Sewal is Assistant Professor in IP and Data Security Laws, Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. Dear friends, I would like to tell you all that Mr. Ashwini Sewal give his best in making these lectures lively, and I would say the content which he used to deliver is helpful for you in studying your course material as well as getting yourself enlightened with the various aspects. So without wasting any time, I would like to welcome our guest, Mr. Ashwini Sewal. Mr. Sewal, welcome to the
Thank you very much. Thank you, Gitika. Well, friends, as rightly mentioned by Gitika, that we have completed one kind of intellectual property, that is patent law, exhaustively in almost 20 sessions. And as we are embarking to a new series today, in new series, I mean to say that I will be covering a new kind of intellectual property that is of much relevance nowadays. It is law relating to trademarks in India. While well friends, in this new series I'll be talking about the trademark law exclusively, wherein we will see the trademark law intricacies and trademark law relevant provisions which are helpful not only for the law student, for a person coming from the legal discipline, rather are of use for even to the traders, for business entities, for all. I mean whosoever wants to own a trademark, wants to run any kind of a business, or say provide any kind of a services, he or she needs a trademark. That we will learn as to how the trademark as such is beneficial for for the trader, for the business entity, for the enterprise, or for a human being as such. I mean the owner of the trademark, the one who owns it, uses it. Well friends, as Gitika rightly mentioned, that in our first session today we will be talking about the introduction to the trademark law. And in the next session, I'll be taking you to next part of the introduction, where I'll go to the threadbare analysis of the provisions, or say threadbare analysis of the definitions of the trademark law, which are of much relevance and would be of much relevance throughout our sessions, later sessions in this kind of intellectual property. Well, friends, as it is an introductory lecture on the trademark law, I'll be first of all telling the meaning and conceptual basis of the trademarks. We need to understand as to what is the meaning and the conceptual basis of the trademark. As the word mark is used here, one can easily make out that it has got something in relation to mark. It has got something to an indication. I mean some sort of a mark or an indication is being used on the goods or services by a person, and that mark or say that indication helps out the consumer, helps out the trader in making his reputation, and it helps out the masses at large primarily. So when it comes to meaning of the trademark law, or when it comes to meaning of the trademark as such, I can in nutshell at this juncture I can tell you, I would like to tell you that trademark means a mark which is used in the course of a trade by the person concerned, or by the person owning that trademark, to distinguish his goods or services from the goods or services of another person. Well, I would like to repeat it for your convenience, friends. As I said, it is a mark or an indication used in the course of the trade, and this is very important, that a mark or an indication is being used in the course of a trade by the person concerned, and his purpose of using it in the course of trade is primarily to distinguish his goods or services from the goods or services of another person. I'll tell you exhaustively about the definition of the trademark provided to us in various formats. I mean provided by the legislation, that is Trademarks Act 1999 of the India, or any definitions available in that regard, preferably the definition given by the World Intellectual Property Organization, the definition provided there in TRIPS agreement, which is the most comprehensive treaty relating to intellectual property. Well, friends, as I was mentioning, that meaning here is very important to understand, and at this juncture I want all of you to grasp the meaning of the trademark, because from the meaning itself we would come to know about so many things about the trademark. I mean, its functioning, I mean to say that it's working, and the purpose of the trademark as such. As I told, that it is a mark in the form of a logo, in the form of a letter, in the form of a numeral. It can be a device, it can be signatures, it can be words, combination of words, it can be combination thereof of the previous mentioned things, or it can be a shape, it can be color combination. So there are so many things which can be called a mark, and whatever mark we use to signify and to indicate our goods or our services in the course of trade, that is called a trademark. But it must distinguish itself from the goods of, it must have the capacity to distinguish the goods or the services of one person from the goods or services of another person. That is a sine qua non to be granted a trademark, or to be seen in a trademark, to be given a trademark registration, or to acquire some sort of a distinctiveness in that. Well friends, when it comes to conceptual basis of a trademark, as I promised that it becomes highly incumbent at this juncture to tell you what is the reason, what is the rationale of bringing a trademark law. Friends, trademark law, as I told, serves manifold purposes. The first and the foremost purpose of the trademark law is tilted, or is sort of purpose from the perspective of the owner of the trademark. When a person owns a trademark, when he uses it in the course of the trade, the reputation of the business, the quality of the products, and his indications or his origin can be made out, can be identified, recognized by the consumer from the trademark only. So there are so many things. If you see, when we talk about the purpose of the trademark law, the person who uses the trademark on his goods, when he affixes the trademark on his goods or services, his pivotal purpose while using the trademark is to get his goods or services distinguished from the goods or services of another person. If you see the purpose from the point of view of the consumer, friends, then from the perspective of the consumers, it has got another important purpose. What is that? The purpose from the point of view of the consumers is a purpose in the form of not to be cheated, not to get deceived by the existence of deceptively similar trademarks, by the existing of confusingly similar trademarks. And the most important function is to recognize the source of the product, source of the services, as to from where the goods are originating, as to from where services are being originated. If consumer knows, or if there is some sort of a mark inculcated into the mind of the consumer, and from that particular mark, if he can relate and associate with the goods concerned on which that particular mark is associated, on which that particular mark is affixed, then the purpose of the law gets served. I mean, the consumer can easily make out as to who is the manufacturer of these goods, as to who is the service provider of these services. And from the point of view of the owner of the trademark, as I told, and the person using the trademark, as I told, he is able to make a mark in the market, and he gets a niche in the market because he has got a trademark protected or registered, or maybe unregistered, he is using with the goods or services, and his goods or services are being identified only because of that particular trademark which is available, or which he affixes with his goods, which he provides with his services, which he makes available to the people with his goods or services. That becomes a brand actually in the market, or it becomes a, sometimes it is used as a trade name as well on an enterprise. On the goods it is used as a trademark, and on enterprise it is used as a trade name. Well friends, as I told, that this seems to be the purpose of the trademark law in the global market, and especially in the market where we get to see variety of trends, a variety of brands available, variety of trademark protected things available, variety of products available with different marks and indications. So it is necessary for the person who has obtained a trademark, or who is in use of a trademark, to get some sort of a protection on his trademark. And it is necessary from the point of view of the consumer that he may not get cheated, he may not get duped, confused by the deceptively similar trademark available, by the confusingly similar trademark available in the market. So well friends, to primarily address these two issues, one issue of the consumers, another issue of the owner of the trademark or user of the trademark law has come into the existence, has been brought into the existence, and its purpose is simple, to address these both issues first of all, and to provide a full-fledged mechanism to get the protection on that particular trademark, and then in case of any violation to take place, or in case of any violation of the trademark, the function of the trademark law is to enforce the trademark which has been abridged, which has been intruded, which has been infringed by any infringer, any wrongdoer I mean. Well friends, as I told, that meaning and conceptual basis of the trademark law needs to be understood by all my viewers. There comes another important function and another important conceptual basis of the trademark law. When we do trade, or say when we provide services, we need some sort of indication or a mark to distinguish our services from the services of other persons. We need some sort of a mark or an indication to distinguish our goods from the goods or other persons. For that matter, we sometimes use the name. You can easily draw an analogy in the marketplace where you go to buy different things or different commodities in the market. You find a lot of varieties available in the market. You find myriad products available of the same sort, or sometimes identical products, similar products, but the point is that these identical or similar products are being manufactured by different entities, and different quality gets served, is being served by different entities, by different manufacturers, by different service providers. So the consumer should always be given the differential products first of all, and he should also be provided with choices in the market, so that he can pick up one or two products as per his preference, as per his expectation. And that cannot happen without the trademarks. That cannot happen if the trademarks are not affixed, or trademarks are not put on the goods, are not labeled on the services. So trademark function is primarily to indicate the source, indicate the origin of the goods, indicate the origin of the services. And its another function here is to let the consumer in a position where he can make choices, where he can attribute, or say where he can characterize, he can easily recognize one particular product or services as per his preference and expectation. Well, what makes the preference and expectation of the person? It's also sometimes depends by and large on the trademark. Trademark functioning is not only to recognize the goods or services, its another function is to make the mark in the market, or say its another function is to become omnipresent in the market. Its another function is to become popular and reputed in the market. How does it happen? When the person launches a product, he puts a trademark on that product, or he advertises that trademark with that particular he advertises the goods or services with that particular trademark. With that advertisement, with that visual or say audio advertisement, the consumer comes to know about the trademark. And trademarks are usually made very catchy and attractive strategically by the owners of the trademark, by the users of the trademark, so that they remain into the mind of the consumer, so that they remain inculcated into the mind of the person. And when he or she goes to the market, when he or she desires to take some sort of services or avail some sort of services, then they can primarily pick out the one that is in their mind, that has inculcated into their mind, and they do so by picking the trademark, by picking the product over which that trademark is affixed, over which that trademark is put. Similarly, in the case of the services, they avail those services which are very popular by way of use of the trademark, which are very popular by way of the use of the trademark, or by way of the use of that particular mark or indication which we call a trademark. Well friends, now coming to the next aspect, when we talk about the introduction of the trademark, or introduction to the trademark law, as I told that there is a requirement of the law and there was a requirement of the law. That is why we brought Trademarks Act 1999 primarily to address these both issues that I just discussed, or the both issues that I just discussed. We have the Trademarks Act 1999 providing full-fledged mechanism which gives us the subject matter for the trademark protection, which tells us about the procedure for obtaining the trademark protection, and it talks about the acts which may constitute the trademark infringement, and there are certain provisions talking about the enforcement of the trademark as to how a trademark can be enforced. So when we talk about the trademark law, the law consists 159 provisions only, and supplement to that there are trademark rules of year 2002, and the rules are basically being brought into the existence for the purpose of supplementing the Trademark Act 1999, which is not as exhaustive as far as it comes to the procedural aspects of the Trademarks Act. As I told friends, Trademark Act 1999 has got multifarious functions. Its prime function is to talk about the subject matter as to what can be given a trademark registration, on what the trademark can be conferred, I mean the subject matter for the trademark. Another thing that has been covered under the trademark law, friends, it's about certain procedural provisions are available, procedural formalities available, which will tell you as to how to obtain the trademark protection by approaching the trademark registrar or the trademark board. But as I told that the Trademarks Act 1999 is not exhaustive in terms of providing you the full-fledged procedure. For that matter, we have got Trademark Rules 2002, and trademark rules are very much exhaustive, very much elaborate on the point of the procedure, on the point of view of getting the trademark registration done in the trademark board. Another important feature of the composition of the Trademarks Act, friends, is in terms of providing certain prohibitions. I mean, every mark or an indication cannot be given a trademark protection. Only those marks or indications can be given a trademark protection which are available in the list of the subject matter to be given a trademark protection. I mean, which falls into the definition of the word mark. First of all, if they fall into the definition of the word mark, then the another test or another parameter by which a trademark can be granted to a person to see it or to scrutinize the mark concerned under the parameters of section 9 and 11, where certain prohibitions are provided. If your mark which you are proposing to register or which you are using or proposing to register is get negated by any of the prohibitions provided under section 9 and 11, then in that case the mark cannot be registered, it cannot be given a registration. Though there are certain exceptions to this rule, I'll deal with those exceptions in my later stages of this series. Well friends, the next important feature and aspect of Trademarks Act 1999, which is very important to be discussed here, is the section number 29 of the Trademarks Act, which enumerates, which comprises certain acts which constitutes infringement. And those acts are very important to be understood by all of you, because it is very easy to use a trademark and it is very easy to make it available in the market. But when it comes to its infringement, you have to be very cautious that it's not get infringed, and you have to be a little worried when it comes to the infringement, so that you can go for the enforcement of your trademark. And for the enforcement, there are remedies available in the Trademarks Act 1999. So friends, I believe this at this juncture that much is sufficient as far as the Trademarks Act 1999 is concerned and its composition is concerned. As I have told you, it comprises 159 provisions. As I have told you that this Trademarks Act 1999 has got Trademark Rules 2002, which are complementary and supplemental to the Trademarks Act 1999, providing providing exhaustive details, not little details, providing very exhaustive details in terms of procedure, in terms of getting the trademark protected. And otherwise, I mean, there are so many things in the trademark rules given. Well, when it comes to the purpose of the act, as I have already told and mentioned, the purpose of the act is twofold: to see the interest of the owner of the trademark, user of the trademark, and to uphold the interest of the consumer or market in at large. I believe this has already been tackled by me and discussed by me. I would come to the next aspect, that is of the composition of the act, that I already discussed. I have told you that Trademarks Act, though there are 159 provisions, but 5 aspects are to be seen in a very preferable manner. The subject matter for the trademark, then prohibitions relating to the trademark, I mean for the registration of the trademark, then the act which constitutes the trademark protection, then procedure to obtain the trademark, and the 5th and the final one is the enforcement part of the trademark in case of its infringement. Friends, coming to certain important definitions, as I have promised you that Trademarks Act cannot be understood without understanding and without discerning the important definitions of the Trademarks Act 1999. And when it comes to important definitions of the Trademarks Act 1999, there are several definitions available under section 2, which is called a definitional clause of the Trademarks Act 1999. In that section 2 of the Trademarks Act 1999, we have, friends, the definition of the word trademark available in section 2(1)(zb). I will discuss it threadbarely. Then we have another important definition to be discussed and tackled, that is the definition of the word mark given under section 2(1)(m). Then there comes another definition of the kinds of different trademarks. In that we have the definition available for collective marks, we have the definition available for service marks, we have the definition available for the words goods or services, because trademark is used in the course of trade on goods or services only. Then there are several other definitions, as in the definition for a trademark board, definition for a trademark registrar, definition where the trademark office would be situated. That is how we will discuss the important definitions when we will take up the Trademarks Act 1999 in a very comprehensive manner. Well, if we talk about important themes in this trademark law, we have 5 important themes to be discussed and to be tackled by us. What all are those 5 themes? Friends, the first and the foremost theme is about definitional part of the trademark law. The next theme is about as to who can obtain the trademark protection and how to obtain it, where to file the trademark protection for. There are few questions that must arise into the mind of the viewers, that if one wants to trade into the goods or into the services, and if he has some creative trademark in his or her mind to be affixed to those goods or services, then where should he go to for filing the trademark protection on that particular trademark, where or which office he should approach in that case, and how to obtain that trademark registration. The procedure should be known to all my viewers and should be understood by all my viewers. That would remain our second theme. The third theme, to understand little intricate things, for example, what constitutes the infringement. Suppose you have obtained a trademark on your goods and services, you have started trading on those goods and services with that trademark. Now the question arises, what if somebody else starts using it unauthorizedly, without your permission, without your authorization, and he sometimes does not use an identical trademark but starts using a deceptively similar trademark or a confusingly similar trademark. Now the question arises, what constitutes deceptively similar trademark and what constitutes confusingly similar trademark? And it has been determined by the law only. The act provides you what constitutes the deceptively similar trademark, what constitutes confusingly similar trademark, how does infringement take place, when does it take place, when does it said to be constituted. These are some of the questions these are some of the questions under this theme of infringement. Then there comes the next part, that is of enforcement. In the case of the enforcement, friends, it is to be seen, what if the infringement takes place, how would you get it enforced? What are the remedies available? What are the authorities to be approached? Where to approach? Whom to approach? How to approach? And what remedies are available at the disposal of those authorities to address your grievances, to address the question of infringement of your trademark? Can he go to avail a civil remedy, or does he have some sort of a criminal remedy available? This is to be seen by all of us in the fifth theme, or important fifth theme of the trademark law, or of what we call it when we talk about the introduction to the trademark law. Well, friends, as I told, that these themes are covered under some sections. So when it comes to important sections of the trademark law, we have first of all the definitional clause, section 2 I mean, then we have section 9 and 11. Immediately after section 2 we can see section 7. Then we have section 9 and 11 providing certain prohibitions for refusal of the registration. Then there comes section 27 and section 29 talking about the infringement. Section 27 is a general provision declaring that that in case of unregistered trademark you can use it and nobody can restrict or say imitate your trademark without the authorization, no matter that you have not got it registered. Then 29 talks about the infringement and some acts which constitutes infringement. Then under section 30, friends, there are certain exceptions to the infringement. We will tackle those also. After the perusal of these 5-6 provisions, I believe, out of 159 total provisions in the Trademarks Act 1999, these 5-6 are very important, very crucial provisions, and other provisions are of also equal importance, but from the theoretical point of view and from the perspective of understanding the trademark law, they are not of much importance. I mean, I would be jumping to few provisions, I will be discussing, perusing few other provisions also and trademark rules as well, but won't be going into the depth of those provisions and to the details of those provisions, because only 5-6 provisions in totality are important, and the entire trademark law is revolving only on those 5-6 provisions. Well, friends, when we talk about the interface, we have got a trademark law interface with the copyright law. I'll discuss that interface maybe in the end part or later part of the discussion on the trademark law and the law relating to trademark law, not now. But there exists a interface between the copyright law and the trademark law as well as the design law. I mean, 3 different IPRs does have some sort of an interface that has to be discussed by me. And thanks for this session. I'll meet you in the next session with another discussion. Thank you so very much. Welcome friends to the next session. In this session we are going to discuss trademark law again, and it is Introduction to the Trademark Law Part 2. Well friends, in Part 2 of Introduction to Trademark Law, I will be taking you to the definitions available or the meaning as such of the trademark law as written in the Trademarks Act 1999. Well friends, for that I have brought that definition which is available or which are available to define the trademark law for your kind convenience and perusal. If you have a look at this slide, friends, then a trademark means, as per the WIPO definition, WIPO here means, friends, it is a World Intellectual Property Organization. World Intellectual Property Organization defines the trademark as a sign capable of distinguishing the goods or services of one enterprise from those of other enterprises. There are two things which are noticeable in this definition of WIPO. The first and the foremost thing which is of importance to my understanding, that the trademark is a sign. It is a sign, and the meaning of the sign has not been defined here, but we construe sign as what? That it can comprise so many things. Sign may be a logo, sign may be a device, sign may be a symbol, sign may be a mark, sign may be a combination of colors, sign may be shape of goods, sign may be packaging. They can fall so many things when it comes to the meaning of the word sign. So trademark, as per the WIPO definition, is a sign. Another important aspect to be seen here, friends, is that that sign should be capable of distinguishing the goods or services of one enterprise from the goods or services of other enterprise. So the next aspect of a mark to be called a trademark, of a mark to be given a trademark protection, is that it has the capacity to distinguish the goods or services of one enterprise from those of another enterprise. And this capacity to distinguish the goods or services of one enterprise from those of another enterprise is actually the purpose of the trademark law, is actually the objective of the trademark law, so that the trademark owner who is using that sign on those goods or services can be able to appropriate as much money and as much fame, as much reputation and goodwill as he can by the use of his distinguishing trademark, by the use of his distinctive trademark. And another function of the trademark law is, from the point of view of the consumer, that also gets served because of this capacity to distinguish the goods or services of one enterprise from the goods or services of another enterprise, where the consumers won't get cheated, won't get deceived and duped, because they are also in the position, or they will also be in the position to identify, to distinguish the goods or the services of one enterprise vis-a-vis to the goods or services of another enterprise, because the trademark is into their minds, it has inculcated into their minds, it has got a reputation, it has got a goodwill, it has got some sort of embarking into the minds of the consumers. So when it comes to the definition provided by the WIPO, as put by me on the screen, friends, it is a trademark which is basically a sign, and sign can be anything as defined by me, but it must have the capability to distinguish. The sign must have the capability to distinguish the goods or services of one person from the goods or services of another person. For example, one Mr. A deals into petroleum goods. He has got one trademark on his petroleum goods. Another Mr. B also deals with petroleum goods, but his trademark, the B's trademark in this question, should not be deceptively similar to the A's trademark, should not be confusingly similar to the B's trademark. And if B uses a deceptively or confusingly similar trademark, then there exists a likelihood of confusion. It may cause confusion, it may result into association, which is bad and which would tantamount to infringement at the end of the day. So to curb these implications and these repercussions, likely repercussions, there is a need to use a trademark or a sign, a mark, which has the capability to distinguish the petroleum as goods of one entity B and petroleum as goods of entity A. That is how the trademark law functions, friends. Another definition, as provided in our Trademarks Act 1999, under section 2(1)(zb) reads, trademark means a mark capable of being represented graphically and which is capable of distinguishing the goods or services of one person from those of others and may include shape of goods, their packaging and combination of colors. Well friends, this definition is very exhaustive and very comprehensive one, and this definition was provided by the 1999 Act. This definition is operative even today. Well friends, when we see this definition and when we threadbarely analyze this definition, we find first of all that the trademark is a mark. It means a mark. In the WIPO definition, the trademark was a sign. I mean, they are one and the same thing. It can be a sign, it can be a mark, but what is mark has been defined under the Trademarks Act 1999 for our kind convenience. I will jump to that particular definition of the word mark given under 2(1)(m) after a little while. But let us come back to this definition of 2(1)(zb), which reads, trademark means a mark capable of being represented graphically. This is little difference between the definition provided by the WIPO and the definition provided under the Trademarks Act 1999. It requires that mark to be capable first of all to be represented graphically. Why there is a need of graphical representation of the trademark? Why the law requires one person proposing to use a trademark or using a trademark to first of all fulfill the condition that his trademark is capable of representing graphically. Well, what is graphical representation? First of all, we need to understand what is graphical representation. From graphical representation, we understand and we mean that one can easily put it on paper or can represent it graphically on paper or anything. I mean, wherever it can be represented. It varies or it may vary from context to context, but the point is that it must be represented. For example, in the case of music, the notations are there which are represented graphically, but music as such is not a subject matter of the trademark law, it is a subject matter of the copyright law. But see, the word, letter, numeral, logo, device, color combinations, they can be easily represented graphically. And graphical representation here, in one word I can say, is the representation on paper, which is very much necessary, which is indispensable. And why is it so indispensable? This must be the question of inquiry for all my viewers. Why there lies a requirement and the necessity to represent it graphically? Well friends, to my understanding, graphical representation is required from 2 points of view. First, the trademark board requires it to be graphically represented so that they can compile those graphical representations in their record and make a repository of those graphical representations for their later use. Another point or another point of view as to why do we need a graphical representation or the trademark's capacity to be represented graphically is from the point of view of the consumers, from the point of view of customers. The customers won't be able to recognize, won't be able to inculcate the trademark and its overall get-up if that trademark is not able to be graphically represented. So whenever a trademark is there which can be easily represented graphically or which has the capacity to be represented graphically, equally it has got the capacity to come to the mind of the person, to inculcate into the mind of the person, and one can easily remember it, can easily recall it with the imperfect recollection, So that is why graphical representation has been made mandatory, has been made essential, has been made a sine qua non first of all under the Trademarks Act 1999. Well friends, if we go ahead with the reading of section 2(1)(zb), which provides the meaning of the word trademark, it says that the trademark means a mark capable of being represented graphically and which is capable of distinguishing the goods or services of one person from those of others. That I have already discussed with you, that it must have the capacity to distinguish. I mean, it must have the distinctive character, it must have the capacity to distinguish. I will discuss the distinctive character in a very exhaustive manner, maybe in one session completely, or I'll devote one session completely on the meaning of the word distinctive character. But in one line you can understand distinctive character here means capacity to distinguish the goods or services of one enterprise from those of other. As I gave you an example that one Mr. A deals in petroleum products, one Mr. B also deals in petroleum products, but they do have different trademarks, they do have different distinctive trademarks. Their trademarks must not be deceptively similar, must not be confusingly similar, because if their trademarks would be confusingly and deceptively similar, they may pose a danger, a tangible danger for the consumer to get cheated, for the consumer to get deceived. Well, another important part, friends, of this definition given under 21ZB of the Trademarks Act, in the later part, in the last part of this definition, it says that the trademark may include shape of goods, their packaging and combination of colors. It says that the trademark may include shape of goods, their packaging and combination of colors. Well, friends, here I would like to tell you that with this new Trademarks Act of 1999, we have got this new definition for the trademark, where it reads and it extends even to include shape of goods as a trademark. It extends even to include packaging as a trademark. It extends to include combination of colors as a trademark. If you compare today's law, I mean this 1999 Act, which is operative law on trademark, with the obsolete or repealed law of 1958 that also dealt with the trademarks, but that law and this new law has got lot of differences, has got lot of variations. The first and the foremost variation in the form of enhancement of the subject matter, enlargement of the subject matter done under this act. This section 21ZB, friends, says that the trademark may include shape of goods. The word shape of goods, color combinations, packaging was not in existence in the 1958 Act. I mean, at the time of that act in the year 1958, and after few years after the enactment of that act, after its operation, it was realized that there is a need to include few more things, because few more things can also be used as indications, can also be used as marks in the course of trade. For example, the shape of good can itself be used as a mark or an indication to distinguish those goods from the goods of other persons. For example, friends, we have got a Pepsi bottle. The shape of the Pepsi bottle itself is trademark, because the shape is such which distinguishes the Pepsi from the other beverages available in the market. This distinction is necessary to be shown, is necessary to be proved for obtaining the registration, or maybe it is necessary to be shown that some goods or services have acquired the distinctive character. But the point is that even that shape of the goods is trademark subject matter, can be given a trademark protection without any hesitation. Another important thing, or another thing that is of importance in this definition 21ZB, even the color combinations are made the subject matter for the trademark protection. We come across many color combinations which are trademark protected. I can give you some examples which are real term or real life examples. We go to restaurants, we find the color combinations of the restaurants, or say the ambience of the restaurants, very catchy, very attractive. And in different restaurants, we don't find the similar or say identical ambience used by those restaurant owners. Why? Because they are not allowed to do so. One color combination cannot be used by, or one ambient style or one trade dress cannot be used by other unauthorized user. He or she has to first of all take the prior permission or permission of the author of the trademark. This is one example to understand color combinations. Apart from that, we see the logo of IBM, there is a color combination in blue and red. We see the color combination of McDonald's, we see the color combination of Adidas, we see color combination of so many trademarks prevailing in the market. Why these different colors are being used? Because even those combination of colors can be given a trademark protection. There is no denial to the registration of the trademark which is exclusively a color combination of two colors, but it must be represented graphically and it must have the capacity to distinguish the goods or services of one entity from the goods or services of another entity. Means that the color combination of Mr. A or used by Mr. A on his goods should be different from the color combination of Mr. B used on similar or identical goods. They are allowed, I mean both can use the color combination separately, they must not be deceptively similar or confusingly similar. Even the packaging is what? Subject matter for the trademark. A packaging is a good subject matter for the trademark. As I told you friends that with the 1999 Act, we have brought so many new categories of trademarks, so many new subject matters to be given a trademark protection, and they are being explicitly mentioned in the definition clause itself. There would be reiteration of these 3-4 things again in the definition of the word mark, but they have reiterated these 3 new kinds of indications, new kinds of marks for the purpose of making it emphatic, making it more clear, making it more vehement that even the color combination, packaging and shape of goods is protectable under the trademark law and can be given a trademark protection. Well, going to another definition available under the TRIPS. Friends, the TRIPS under Article 15 defines or provides protection for any sign, for any combination of signs which are capable of distinguishing the goods or services of one undertaking from those of other undertakings, and they must or shall be capable of constituting a trademark. Such signs in particular words, including personal names, letters, numerals, figurative elements and combination of colors as well as any combination of such signs. Article 15 of the TRIPS, friends, which talks about the protection on different marks or indication, says that any sign or any combination of signs capable of distinguishing the goods or services of one undertaking from those of other shall be capable of constituting a trademark. I mean any sign or combination of sign shall constitute a trademark if it has got the capacity to distinguish itself from the goods or services of another person. Another thing that Article 15 provides in the sweep of its language, it says such signs may include personal names, it may include letters. I mean, what do we need to understand here, friends? Even the personal name can be given a trademark protection. Your name can get a trademark protection, my name can get a trademark protection, name of any celebrity can get a trademark protection as per this definition. Letters, any letters can be given a trademark protection, numerals can be given a trademark protection, figurative elements, combination of colors. See, as far as the Article 15 of the TRIPS is concerned, the combination of color is a very good subject matter to be given a trademark protection as defined under Article 15. Later it says that such signs shall be eligible for registration as trademarks. This Article 15 provides that a sign or any combination of signs shall constitute a trademark. It further provides that it would comprise so many things, personal names, it would comprise letters, numerals, figurative elements, combination of colors. Later it says that such signs shall be eligible for registration. It provides that these signs, I mean signs in the form of letters, numeral, figurative elements, they are protectable, they are to be given the registration under the Trademarks Acts of domestic nation of different countries, of respective nations into their domestic legislations. Then further it says, where signs are not inherently capable of distinguishing the relevant goods or services, members may make registrability depend on distinctiveness acquired through use. The members may require as a condition of registration that signs be visually perceptible. I mean, this Article 15, friends, is the axis on which the trademark law of all signatory nations revolves. I mean, every nation whosoever is a signatory of this TRIPS agreement has to make the trademark law in consonance with Article 15. And Article 15 in its prominent features, in its distinctive elements, in its important aspects says that a sign or any combination of sign can constitute a trademark, one thing. Second is that that sign may include numerals, letters, figurative elements, color combination, etc. Second thing. Third thing, friends, it says it is registrable. Those signs or combination of colors are registrable if they have the capacity to distinguish the goods or services of one enterprise from the goods or services of another enterprise. And the fourth and the foremost thing, friends, an important thing, where it provides an exception to this rule that the trademark proposed to be used by the person should not necessarily to be having a distinctive character always, should not possess the distinctive character always. It says that even if that trademark has acquired or is acquiring a distinctive character, has acquired a distinctive character or is in a process of acquiring a distinctive character, it can be given a trademark protection depending on what? Depending on the fact that it has acquired that distinctive character through its use. What do I mean to say, friends, here? That there are two kinds of trademarks which we're gonna see. One which are owning or possessing inherent distinctiveness, inherent capacity to distinguish first. Another category here, the trademarks or marks or signs or indications which acquire distinctiveness over the period of time. They don't have inherent distinctiveness available. The best example for inherent distinctiveness trademark is the trademark of Bikaner, of the Bikaner sweets, where the word Bikaner as such cannot be given a trademark protection by purview of section 9 of the Trademarks Act, which provides prohibition on use of any geographical name to be given a trademark protection. But as the word Bikaner with those sweets or with those commodities in concern or in question have acquired distinctiveness over the period of time. So the Article 15 of the TRIPS provides this leeway or provides this mandates basically to all the signatory nations to make the law in consonance with Article 15 and do provide some provisions providing a registration facility even to those trademarks which do not have inherent distinctiveness, which do not possess inherent distinctiveness. Even those trademarks can be given a trademark protection, but there is a need to prove that they have acquired the trademark protection through use over the period of time. And members are required as a condition precedent one more thing, one more sine qua non, that the trademark which they do register should be perceptible. The way in Indian context the Trademarks Act 1999 in India has specifically categorically mentioned that the trademark must have the capacity to be represented graphically. What qualification does it fulfill? It fulfills the qualification as posed under Article 15 of the TRIPS, which says that it should be perceptible, it should be graphically representable, or in any manner it should be perceptible. Even a sound is perceptible, but sound as such cannot be represented graphically. But there are some other manners from where or by which we can make a sound perceptible, and that is why the sound trademark is also the order of the day, is a subject matter to be given a trademark protection. Not in India, but in many countries the sound has already been, or the countries has started already given sound as a trademark or sound as a trademark protection. Well, friends, coming to another important aspect of our discussion, where I was talking about the definition, section 21ZB along with Article 15 of the TRIPS and the definition provided by the WIPO of trademark law, we have concluded, we have understood that trademark is first of all either a mark or a sign. It should have or must have the capability to distinguish the goods. And the third thing that is coming out from the reading or from the collaborative or say compendium reading of these three different definitions, that must be perceptible. it must be represented graphically. And the fourth and the foremost requirement, it must be distinctive. Distinctive here means must distinguish the goods or services of one enterprise from the goods or services of another enterprise. If that feature is missing, or if any of the feature is missing from the proposed trademark, from the trademark which is in use, then in that case no trademark shall be registered. As per section 9 and 11 of the Trademarks Act 1999, we get to see that there are certain prohibitions posed which specifically and categorically says that the trademark shall not be registered if the trademark is what is descriptive, is laudatory, or there are some more disqualifications given under section 9 and 11 which I will deal later, I mean in my next discourses, in my next sections. Well, that's all as far as the introduction to the trademark law is concerned. We'll go with some concrete topics in the next section, friends. Till then, goodbye, have a good day. Thank you very much.
With this note, thank you, sir. Thank you so very much for giving us a prolific session. Dear friends, for your feedback, for your questions, you can mail us at info.cc@thereturnic.in. And for accessing this lecture, the number of times you wanted, we would be uploading this lecture on YouTube very soon. So keep watching us and keep giving your feedback. We would be meeting again very soon. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much.